Welcome to Creating Success in the Mess, where we talk about just that, creating success in the mess of this thing we call life.
We're your hosts, Corey and Whitney, a husband and wife team that does life and business together.
In this podcast, we share our struggles and funny moments as we have journeyed growing our family, our faith, and businesses.
We share inspiration, motivation, and practical tips and tricks to help you build yourself and a life you love.
We invite you to join us every week on the podcast, and we can't wait to create success in the mess together. Okay, so we are back. Me and Leslie are back with a new podcast episode this week, and we are going to kind of like dive into a quote that I read, and then I shared it with you, and I was like, oh my gosh, this, affects so much of our life in so many ways. And it actually, like we don't recognize it at the time, but we're actually doing exactly what it is that we're trying not to do. So, the quote I read, and it doesn't have like an author of who said it, but it said, if you avoid failure, you also avoid success. And when I read that, I was like, well, that's interesting. And then the more that it kind of sat with me, the more it was like, oh my gosh, like this happens a lot throughout my day and throughout my life. And so then I started kind of like processing it through. So do you want to kind of tell what your take is, like how it landed with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you brought this quote to me this morning, because I actually saw it, I think it was like 2 days ago when I was mindlessly scrolling through Facebook, avoiding something that I didn't want to do, procrastinating. And the irony is what I was procrastinating about was a furniture piece, a commission for a client. And I was stuck. I was really stuck. Right. And it made it really hard for me to go further. Like I wanted to give up. It was the first time ever in doing this where I wanted to say, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to complete this. I saw the quote, and then I reached out to you and you said something really inspiring. And I never even told you that I'd seen this quote. This was just a real life example absolutely, of doing this. And I feel like this could be for little things, medium things, big things. Like the more I think about it, the more examples that I can think of where myself personally or someone I know closely has fallen into this trap of self-doubt and being so scared to do something that they don't succeed because they don't start.
Right. Yeah. So like I have an art studio where we taught like painting on canvas, and then a furniture refinishing business where we do and we teach like painting on furniture. And I can't count, it's almost a guarantee everybody that would come in like had this dream, this hope, this thing they wanted to achieve. They wanted to paint something, they wanted to learn how to paint on a canvas, they wanted to whatever. And the minute like they would sit down in the seat, they automatically it was just like a river that just started flowing of doubt of like, am I doing this right? Am I putting the brush on here right? Am I like using the right color? And it was like it became so strong and apparent to everyone sitting around that they were struggling with this self-doubt. And I think that when we're in that situation, like when we're the ones sitting there doing all the self-doubt, it isn't necessarily as apparent as maybe it is out like when you're, watching somebody else do it. But I think you're exactly right. I think it comes, all across the board. Like our last podcast, we were talking about, decluttering and cleaning out your house. And so I think that, when you get to that middle section where you have everything vomited all over the floor, it's like, just put it back, just hurry up and put it back because like we start like self-talk about like
the shitty committee.
Yeah, the shitty committee, right? Like, can I do this? Is it going to look good? Is it going to, and we start putting all this like pressure of 9 times out of 10, it comes back to, is this going to fail? I think ultimately, I mean, I know for me personally, I don't like to do anything that's not a success. Like
Right. Yeah.
my entire life, I put like that pressure on of doing it right, doing it perfect. In reality, that's not even achievable. But I think that is what gets us the fear of the failure, and it shows up with all that stuff, is what makes us stop and stall out, or maybe never even start.
Yeah, definitely failure to start. It's funny, you just said the word perfect about doing it perfect. And a couple of years ago, I noticed, and I think I still do it a little bit, that when someone would say something, at my response instead of yes or okay, I'd be like, perfect. And so this is probably 4 years ago or so, I started noticing my daughter having a real obsession with getting things perfect. And so I sat down and I told her, you know, perfect doesn't exist. It's perfect, in my opinion, is in the eye of the beholder. What's perfect to me might not be perfect to you. And so I was like, let's take that word out of our vocabulary. And she said, but Mom, you say it all the time. And I was like, yes, good call. I do. But, I feel that pressure to do something perfect will often either lead to tears. Like I've seen her tearful because it wasn't perfect. Right. Or someone just saying, I'm not good enough. Why should I even start?
Right.
It won't be good. The last few things I did failed. Right.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I am the opposite. I won't do it at all. Like I will predetermine. I cannot guarantee this is going to be a success, therefore I'm not going to do it. And I definitely see that reflecting back to me through my youngest daughter. And we are working like on, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't even actually have to turn into anything. It's the process that you're doing. It's the joy and the feeling and what you're experiencing in the middle that matters. And it's not actually the outcome in the end. And it's easy for me to tell her that. But like me personally, like I still struggle with not doing it. You know, like I'll have this great idea and I'll have all this inspiration and this like passion or whatever. And then my perfect committee shows up and I don't like follow through with it. And I realize, you know, like by me failing to act, make movement, make change, make progress, like just doing something and enjoying it in the moment for, you know, what it is at this moment, and not putting the pressure of like having success at the end on it, I'm failing because I'm not doing anything and I'm not even like growing and learning, you know, through this process that I've already deemed might not look like success to other people.
Well, you know what I think too? So let's just take what you just said. So you don't start, right? And you're not growing, but you're also, I think, the more that you have an idea and you get excited about it and then you don't start it because of self-doubt, I think you kind of spiral a little bit into low self-esteem. Like if you notice a pattern of you're doing it very often, all you're doing is reinforcing in yourself that you can't be successful.
Yeah.
That you can't do these things, you won't be successful. So then you're manifesting for yourself that you're not a success.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you just keep building layers of the same thing right on top of each other. And then, you know, you're kind of buried under all of these newfound layers of the exact same thing that is causing you to not make progress to begin with.
Yep. Negative negative self-talk.
Yes. Yep.
I want to go back to the example that I alluded to earlier about, I was working on a commission. So I was stuck. I mean, every time I touched this thing, it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It was just a disaster. And I was like, I just want to stop. And, I mentioned that to you. And do you remember what you said?
Probably not. You tell me.
You were like, I don't remember what you called them, but these are the projects where you learn the most.
Oh,
These are the
yeah.
moments where
Yeah.
you charge on and you wind up learning
Uh-huh.
more about yourself and your process and what works and what doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
and feel good about finishing it. Like
Yeah.
I don't like to quit, but I really
Right.
wanted to quit this month.
Yes. Yeah.
But I heard
Yeah.
you say that and I didn't want to let this client down and I was like, okay, I can do it. And when I do it, it'll be over and I want it to be over. So I'm
Uh-huh.
just going to keep trudging through. And
Right.
it actually wound up being a huge success and she loved it.
Yeah. That's exact. So when I offered you that like advice, it came from a place of experiencing the exact same thing. Like we had a commission piece that was somebody's and, they come to you and they have something specific that they want. And so, you have like something that you are gearing towards, achieving. And my perfect self likes to get it perfect the way that exactly how they wanted. And, not all pieces want to be, done that way. Like they kind of have their own attitude to a degree, and you don't really know what you're going to get once you kind of peel back the the layers of what's on it. You might get something else. And so we had a piece that we were supposed to be achieving something specific, and it wasn't wood, it was veneer. And it just did not want to like take the stain to get to the color that she wanted it to be. And then there was like defects in it. And if it's not wood, it's like a nightmare, and so like we had this piece and we were putting all this pressure to get it like what she originally said, because that's what we had deemed as we would be successful if we got to this point. And we just couldn't. I mean, it was just a nightmare. We spent hours in tears, and I was like, you know what, just give her the table back, refund her the money. And Corey was like, we can't give her a table that looks like this. Like, we have to get it to somewhere. Like, right. We can't just give her a half-done table. And, so then we would go up and down throughout the process of like, he would be like, just give it back. I would just be like, give it back. And then finally, we just called and we were like, this is not getting exactly where you had originally wanted. Do you want to come look at it? This is what we're dealing with. And then let's talk about how to go from here. And the whole like thing about it was we were so set on getting to and achieving whatever it was that we had originally planned on success. And in reality, like it turned out better than what it would have if we had just done, check marked that original success box. And she actually loved it more and it matched better. And so there was so much success that came out of and so much learning and growth that happened in the middle of it. So when I offered you that advice, like it literally came from a place of like experiencing that like myself.
Yeah. It's so funny. You talk about peeling back the layers and then you talk about with furniture, sometimes you don't know what you're getting until you're taking off the layers. So I think those two, really jive. But that was, I don't know if you remember, I don't even know if I told you the whole thing. That was like sort of the final straw so the story is I had to go out and get 2 nightstands that would be no more than 21 inches. She had a really tight spot and she wanted drawers. She didn't want any open space in the bottom. And I find them from this guy he's about an hour from me and he just paints everything white. But not the way you and I paint.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
So after peeling off 3 layers of different shades of latex paint, I found that one nightstand had a wood top and the other nightstand had a veneer top.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, not veneer. Laminate.
Yeah.
And talk about tears. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, all of this. Because I'd stripped the bodies of them first and for whatever reason left the top last. So I thought I was like almost there, almost ready to be putting paint on. Nope. So I'm like, I will sand this thing down. I will make this work. Well, I broke my sander because that's just not how you do it. That's just not how it works.
Right.
And then finally reached out to her, gave her a couple of solutions, thought she was going to tell me, forget about it. And it did. It came out better.
Right.
But I mean, had I not heard from you, talked to you about it, had I not had her blessing to just try a few things and, and see what I could do, I would not have succeeded with that. It would have definitely been a big failure.
Yeah. I think the key is really, when we're caught up in the moment of, in our head and with all of the could be's, would be's, should be's, what ifs, like if we just take a minute and like when you find yourself hesitating to start or when, all those could be's, would be's, should be's show up, if we just take a minute and step like kind of out of ourselves, like just kind of step back, I think sometimes we would recognize that, this flood of, questions and doubts and what, the failure flood is kind of like coming in, and it is easier once you recognize like what you're dealing with. So when you can step out and recognize all the could be's, would be's, should be's, what ifs are actually just you afraid of like, what if it doesn't work out? Or, starting to question like what is going on, or if you're going to actually get it exactly like when you first, started. Like, I think like then we can kind of regroup and be like, no, wait a minute. Like I'm living all the way down there in the end, but I'm right over here in the beginning or right here in the middle. And so if we can just come back to the point of where we are and be in that space and just work from that place instead of like jumping all the way forward and predetermining whatever, is down there that isn't there yet because we're not there.
Yeah. It's going to fail. Like you're not there.
No.
Right. And so how could you possibly know?
You have no idea. Yeah. And you might be just determining it's going to fail based off of like the glasses that you have on right now. But in 2 or 3 more steps, like you're going to have different glasses on. Down there, it's going to look totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think when we're feeling that way, definitely step away. Step away, maybe take a little walk, clear your head. But I feel it's really important to outnumber the shitty committee. Have people that surround you, that uplift you. That you do the same for them, not people that are like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure you can do something different. It'll, try a different project, whatever the case may be. You need to be surrounded by people who want to lift you up and help you see that you can succeed.
Yeah. Yes. And also you do it for yourself, like, for every negative comment, you have the ability to make a positive comment. So for every could be's, would be's, should be's, what if, you can turn it around with the positive side of, what if, like the could be, should be, would be. And so now you have between you counteracting your negative with your positive and then your community around you, you're going to just proceed forward. And then at that point, what? Like you're going to achieve success because the way that you get success is by movement, like is by doing, is by experiencing. It's not by standing behind the start line because you are afraid to even move. It's not by, stopping in the middle because things look like they're going, a little different than what you thought they would. Like as long as you're moving, you're bound to catch success down the road. It's in the standing still where there's no hope that success is, coming or going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. You're standing still. You never can be a success if you're standing still. I mean, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, you're almost guaranteeing failure, which is exactly what you're afraid of.
Yep, and that's what the quote is all about, right? You can't have success if you're. Wait, I got to look at the quote again now because I know I'm saying it wrong. If you avoid failure, you also avoid success. So not taking those steps forward. But I also think, and we've said this, we've given a few examples of starting and maybe not finishing. or being afraid, thinking the finish line is failure. I feel like this is kind of similar to imposter syndrome, which you hear that phrase talked a lot about in our industry, where you just don't think you're good enough. You don't think you're there. You can possibly be as successful as that person or as perfect. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you convince yourself that you're not that successful. You're not that, you're not known, or whatever it is that you are trying to do. You've convinced yourself that you're not that you're not in that category.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And a lot of times, in business, like in particular, like whenever I'm doing anything, imposter syndrome shows up. It's always me doubting myself, in comparison to what I feel like I don't have, or I may look like I have less, like, than so-and-so or such and such. And imposter syndrome oftentimes leads us to stand still, to hold back, to not go the mile, to not like show up and be everything. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do have to show up. Again, that's, if you don't show up, you're never going to be successful. And I think, you mentioned earlier about like having these ideas. Like I find myself sometimes I'm laying down trying to fall asleep at night and I like come up with this great idea. And I was talking to my partner the other day about a couple of them, and he was like, well, why aren't you doing any of this? And I was like, well, maybe someone else has done it, or it's too hard, or I don't know if I really want to. And I had all these reasons for not doing these things. And some of the ideas were not half bad. And so I feel like, again, like surround yourself by people who want you to succeed, who you want them to succeed in turn. Those are the people you want to have at your table. I think you and Corey talked about that a couple of podcasts ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I am just like you. I lay there and I have 15 million different ideas. And a lot of times, like Corey's like, oh gosh, what is this idea? Like another idea? Are we actually implementing this, or are we going to, bail out before we like get going on it? And I think like it's imposter syndrome, 100% that shows up, which is, just ruled by your shitty committee. This is 100% what it is. And then we are, like you said, essentially just manifesting the failure by having all of this, negative self-talk and doubt, instead of just taking action without pressure of it actually being, maybe like, so what? Like there's 5 people instead of 500 people, those, like everybody starts somewhere. And we oftentimes are judging ourselves not off of their start, off of where they are when 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, And so if you judged off of their start, you may not feel like it would be a good idea for somebody else. Like you may feel like, okay, look how their start was, like that could be mine too.
Right. But just by comparing yourself to someone else, you're already guaranteed failure, in my opinion. Like it should never be about someone else's success or how they started, or they're doing this, so I need to do that. You need to go after what you believe in, what you're passionate about.
Yes.
And manifest that. Because I really do feel very strongly that all this negative self-talk is just creating a life of, I hate to say failure when I refer to life, but mediocrity, maybe?
Lack and scarcity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Like if you are involved in the, up in your talk or in even out of your mouth with other people, like negative, then you are not going to attract abundance. Like abundance and positivity are not going to attract to a negative, mindset, a negative self-talk, a negative anything, And so I absolutely agree that you can't compare yourself to others and speak negatively of yourself and then think that success or abundance or happiness or positivity are going to show up, because it just doesn't attract to the negativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think we're also doing this to our kids is the way I see it. We're teaching them the exact same thing just by them seeing what we're doing.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's almost like it's a legacy of mediocrity.
Yes.
So I actually been talking to my daughter yesterday about manifesting and kind of explained to her what that was, and she's really interested in it. And I feel like it's something I don't think enough about what thoughts am I putting out into the universe? Oh wow, I'm putting out some not so good ones.
Yeah.
What can I do about that to change it? And so that's where I am now, is thinking about, all right, let's turn this around and feel more success.
Yeah. I have a friend that is living with a terminal illness, and she has defied every odd that, all the odds that the medical profession has, spoken. And every time that, she does it, they always say it's a miracle. And it is really, truly a miracle. But the way that she lives her life is, from a place of she doesn't just sit and speak negativity over all of, the situation and her can'ts and shouldn'ts and wouldn'ts and shame and guilt. She speaks positivity and looks at it from a curious view of how, what could I do? Let's try this, and then every time she does that, she just calls in the success of healing the bone that should have never healed, of walking when she should have never been walking, of, healing the infection that the antibiotics aren't healing. And so I think that is a perfect example of what you were saying, if you want it, you have to approach it positively and curious and, exploration, and then success is bound to follow after you do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I remember, so Kylie was asking me when we were talking about this, she's like, so I just have to think these things, think these positive thoughts, think about the things that I want and put that out there in the world. And I was like, well, not exactly. I said, as you're thinking these things, putting out these positive vibes and saying I'm going to be a success at blank. Let's just use an example. I'm going to be an amazing soccer player next year, and I'm going to get on the next, big team. I said, but as you're thinking those things, you'll slowly find that you're doing things to get there.
Right.
So it's not just saying it or thinking it. You actually do start taking the steps that you need to take, maybe without even realizing it, but you wind up getting yourself there.
Yeah. So when we first started, explaining manifesting and stuff, it was from, it seems like, okay, I just need to walk around and chant positive thoughts, right? But actually, isn't how it works. You have to have the positive thoughts, and you have to think the positive thoughts, but you actually have to fully embody the whatever it is. And so you actually have to feel like you are already that successful soccer player, or, you have to feel it in your body. And then that's where it becomes to the outward. You're energetic when you feel it is what actually is attracting the energy from, whereas if you're just thinking it in your brain, it's not necessarily your energetic isn't really necessarily there.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it fun explaining those kind of topics to kids?
Yeah, they're so oh, okay, I'll just walk around and talk about I want a chocolate candy bar. And they're stop talking about it.
If I keep saying I want a chocolate candy bar, maybe Dad will bring one home from the store.
And all that actually does is increase the energetic of would you stop asking me for a candy bar? Right.
And then the disappointment when you don't get the candy bar because you asked one too many times. Because I'm always if you ask me one more time.
Yes. Yeah. I say that to my youngest. She's relentless. I mean, she will ask and ask and ask. And honestly, I think she does actually feel like she's, embodied whatever it is that she's asking for. But to me, it's I cannot just go get in the car and get you a candy bar right at this second, okay? Just stop asking me. If you ask me one more time, we're not getting one at all.
Yeah, no one's getting candy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought this was an awesome episode, and I hope that it helps everyone else recognize and realize the places where the fear of failure and, our inaction and our shitty committee and imposter syndrome and all of these, different ways that we are actually sitting in failure and asking for more failure just out of, fear that it may not be successful, instead of us just having fun and exploring and seeing where it goes. I hope this helps other people realize that they're not alone. Like, we all experience this all day long.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully recognize and identify some of the ways that it shows up. And then, remind you that, like, sometimes if you just take a zoom out and you just look at the situation that is in front of you, then it makes it a little less scary. It makes it a little less paralyzing. And then, get back in and just keep going, because maybe it doesn't look like how you thought it was going to look. Maybe you haven't even started and you don't even know what's happening, but it may actually end up being more successful and better than you could have ever even imagined to begin with.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And I'm sure that we've helped a lot of people today.
So go over to our social medias. Let us know how you deal with this, how you recognize this. If this helped you, that you can leave us a voice memo. We love the voice memos in our podcast in Spotify, and we want to connect with you. So go connect with us, leave us a memo, send us an email, reach out, let us know what you're thinking.
Thank you so much for listening. We know that we all get busy trying to do life, and our hope is that we can find ways to implement time and space to create a life we love living every day on our terms, right in the middle of all the messes of life.
We hope that you've been inspired and our conversation has helped you in some way, and it would be so amazing if you share this conversation with somebody that you think would really benefit from hearing it. You can text someone the link, or you can share it via email or on your social media pages. And please, we would love for you to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, because it helps us so much. The more reviews we have, the more people that will find our show, and our ultimate goal is for everyone to feel inspired, to find ways to create their own success right in the middle of all the mess. And no, they are not alone in doing so.
And finally, we'd love for you to join our weekly email list so that we can connect on a deeper level, and you can always be in the know of our new release events and opportunities.